Good morning. I'm John Potter with the Connected Commerce Council, and I'm very pleased to be here and virtually visiting Fort Worth, Texas, where there's a lot of excitement in the tech community, a lot of excitement in startups, a lot of excitement with digitally empowered small businesses. We have a great crowd here, a great roster of speakers, and it's an exciting time. I'm going to do 30 seconds on the Connected Commerce Council, and then I'm going to pass it over to the mayor. For those who don't know 3C, the Connected Commerce Council, we are a small business group. We've got 15,000 members, digitally empowered members across the country, including well over 1,000 in Texas. All of these small businesses are folks that rely on digital tools and technology, digital platforms for growing, starting, operating, and really succeeding in their business. So we have a huge investment in the technology community. We think it's critically important for small businesses, and we are really happy to be here today with a great roster. So with that, I'm going to pass it to the mayor of Fort Worth, who is Mayor Mattie Parker, a relatively new mayor who I am sure is doing great things for the community of Fort Worth. So Mayor, let me pass it to you, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Jonathan. Great to be with everybody today. Obviously, wish it was in person, but there are times when technology really does help us reach additional audiences. When I was asked to be a part of today's webinar, I spent a little bit of time talking about, or thinking to myself with my staff, how critical entrepreneurship and small business growth is for our local economy in Fort Worth. It's the perfect timing. We just came off a really historic Global Entrepreneurship Week. You're going to get to hear from some of those participants and leaders like Cameron Cushman during the panel discussion. But as mayor, even on the campaign trail, I talked a lot about the future of our economy. And it's not just those large corporate relocations that we absolutely want our fair share of. But we know in Fort Worth and Tarrant County specifically, the growth of small businesses is actually the bedrock of our economy. We had over 30,000 new jobs in 2019, thanks to small business growth. And those are jobs, frankly, that are paying well above the minimum wage. They're living wage jobs and really enable our citizens to take care of families, grow businesses here in Fort Worth, which is really important to our economy. The reason I wanted to speak to this group specifically is because of your focus on technology and digital use. And I love this focus on advocacy and policy. That's really where I spent 20 years of my career, understanding the criticality of how you can better advocate for yourselves at local, state, and federal levels to get things done. So when you think about your work, I want you to know that with Fort Worth, we're already focused in this area. It doesn't start at City Hall, really leaning on the expertise of organizations like Tech Fort Worth and Sparkyard to say, what do our small business leaders need to be successful? And frankly, because of what everyone's carrying around in the United States right now, this phone right here, I've joked a lot in Fort Worth, there's this friendly rivalry between Dallas and Fort Worth. And I want people to stop talking about Dallas, stop talking about Texas, and think about how to grow your business internationally. And thanks to technology tools that are already available right now, we protect those. You can absolutely do that from a smartphone and make sure our small businesses can connect with customers across the globe and frankly, put Fort Worth on the map at the same time. And we have countless examples of that happening right now in Fort Worth. I'm bullish on our city. For those that may not be familiar, we are the fastest growing city in the country. It's hard for us to believe that, almost 1 million people. People are moving here in droves for a variety of reasons, but they will stop doing that if we don't have them connected to commerce and an economy that's booming and really make sure that they're enabled to get things done in their city. We also are a young city. We're the second youngest city in America. Lots of young families here, which bodes well for a future workforce. We're really doubled down too on efforts to really connect students to college, career, and military. Why does that matter to an entrepreneurship business? This is not just about the careers your grandfather had or having a company for 50 years and working for a GM or GE or a Ford, which is wonderful. But we also want to connect students to entrepreneurship in new ways. And the panel you're going to get to hear from is really leading that effort. What does it look like to inspire our youngest students to be entrepreneurs themselves? And let's be honest, these kids are digital natives. I have a 20-year-old daughter who we joke with is our IT director in our household. They understand this world much differently and how to connect those consumers and also business leaders into this local economy. I also wanted to talk a little bit about COVID-19. So all of you probably have stories of how your businesses survived or pivoted during the pandemic, which is an incredibly difficult time. And as things progressed with COVID and we understood the CARES Act dollars that were coming on, they had lots of unlike a lot of federal dollars, there were less strings attached. They were telling local governments, you do with these what you think is best for your local economy and for your citizens. And we did focus on the normal things, vaccine deployment and testing, of course. But we also asked ourselves, how do you spend over $158 million of CARES Act funding, which is what the city of Fort Worth received, in a way that really serves small businesses? So my predecessor, Mayor Betsy Price, I was still on staff as chief of staff at the time. We created an organization called Fort Worth Now, made up of local business leaders, and really focused on how do you deploy those funds in a different way to get into the hands of business leaders, small businesses specifically, that were going to close. They weren't going to make it through COVID-19 if we didn't help serve them. So we spent $55 million, 34% of our CARES Act funding on small businesses. I know in Texas, we exceeded the expectations of every other Texan city. No one came close to us in deploying that kind of money. I can't speak to the rest of the United States. It was a total of 1,640 grants in our community, a true game changer. We hope to allow businesses to survive. We also did a lot of PPE assistance, PPP loan assistance with our local banks, to making sure that companies, even the smallest, could have access to those loans as well, even if they'd also gotten a grant. So those are things we worked on in Fort Worth. As we come out of COVID-19, it's a competitive business as cities across the United States kind of to come back online to be successful economically. And frankly, some of our biggest competitors are right here in Texas, Houston, Austin, San Antonio, Dallas. All these cities are competing for the next generation of leaders to grow their economy. And Fort Worth is finally coming out on top. You can see this emergence of what's going on in that city. What do we want to be about? And I truthfully think that our entrepreneurship space is really what's making that happen. When you think about the future economy of the United States, you're already seeing a disruptive technology bench happening with our big companies. And what I want to encourage 3C about, and I'm happy to do more of this into the future, is as you think about your advocacy campaigns, it's all about storytelling. It's something you do really well. I mean, I can't imagine Fort Worth without the small businesses. Some of them you're going to hear from today, entrepreneurial leaders like Sarah, would not be surviving in an economy like Fort Worth if it weren't for technology available to them. And that's multifaceted. It also includes social media campaigns to get your business up and running. And we need to work together. And as a mayor here in Fort Worth, I'm committed to help you with that cause in Washington, to tell your story and tell it well, to make sure these platforms remain available to you just like they would for big corporate companies across the United States. In closing, I'll just say, I think that Fort Worth is at a pinnacle of possibility. There's so much opportunity in our city. If you're not familiar with Fort Worth, if you're joining us from across the United States or across Texas, please come visit us, connect with some of these panelists you're going to hear from in a moment. I think you're going to be really encouraged and frankly inspired by their leadership and understanding what's happening right here in Fort Worth. We have a diversity of talent, a diversity of businesses, all shapes and sizes that are happening really in every corner of our city, which is really encouraging for the future of Fort Worth, now almost 1 million people and growing. And it's fun to be a mayor. I was elected in June. So I've been at it, I guess, about almost 6 months. And I was the youngest mayor ever elected to a large city in the country. I'm now joined in the ranks by women like Michelle Wu, who just was elected mayor of Boston. It's a very exciting time to be a mayor of a large city in this country, especially as we fight to emerge from the COVID pandemic and come back stronger and better. And you have my commitment on behalf of our city and really mayors across this country to serve our small businesses well. Make sure we have an entrepreneurial ecosystem that leads us into the future. And I'm learning every day from folks like yourselves. So I really appreciate you letting me be a part of your discussion this morning. Thanks, Jonathan. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Parker. It was really great. We appreciate all you're doing in Fort Worth. And I also appreciate, candidly, your focus on advocacy and your history of advocacy, because we work very hard to find great small businesses and frankly, some of them find us that are doing extraordinary things through the pandemic to survive and continuing to grow going forward. So we are, in fact, spending a lot of time with some Texas politicians like Senators Cruz and Cornyn and Attorney General Paxton, and frankly trying to explain and work with them so they understand the connectivity between the very large digital platforms that oftentimes are political piñatas, candidly, and yet the critical services that they provide to small businesses right? If we don't understand the linkage between the very large platforms and the very smallest businesses, then we can find that public policies are going to rebound, right? You can attack the big guys and think that you're hitting very large players and not understand the deep and integral connectivity, the support that they provide for small businesses through advertising and e-commerce. So advocacy is something that we care about deeply. I am going to take the opportunity now. Mayor Parker, you are welcome to stay or you are welcome to go. We're going to pass this to Kristen Barton from the Fort Worth Report, who is our moderator for today's panel.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'm really happy to be here today and to chat with everyone and these wonderful panelists about small business and entrepreneurship in Fort Worth. Really quick, if you don't know about the Fort Worth Report, we launched back in April. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan local news website. You can go to our site, fortworthreport.org, and sign up for our newsletter and get all of the free local news you could possibly want. So to get started, I'm going to introduce our panelists. I'll start with Hayden Blackburn, the Executive Director at Tech Fort Worth. As Executive Director and the Director of Cowtown Angels, Hayden facilitates connections between entrepreneurs and angel investors. He partners with universities to commercialize technologies. He is a leader in the development of an entrepreneurial culture and mindset across the DFW region. He's helped organize multiple community staples, including Startup Weekend and 1 Million Cups Fort Worth. Additionally, he serves on the boards of organizations working in economic development and education, including Near Southside Inc. and the Fort Worth Public Library Foundation. Before he joined Tech Fort Worth, Hayden was a creator and founding director of IdeaWorks Fort Worth, a mixed industry incubator that was formed in 2013 as a public-private partnership to fill a gap in the Fort Worth entrepreneurial ecosystem. It's great to have you, Hayden. Good morning.
Good morning. It's an absolute pleasure to join. Looking forward.
Okay. And next we have Cameron Cushman, who is the Assistant Vice President of Innovation Ecosystem at the University of North Texas Health Science Center. He has over a decade of experience building entrepreneurial communities. He began his career in the George W. Bush administration in Washington, D.C., before moving to Kansas City and worked at the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation. While there, he led several initiatives to help build entrepreneurial communities, including co-founding 1 Million Cups, which is a weekly educational event for entrepreneurs that is now in over 180 U.S. cities and 30 countries. He also worked in the private sector as the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Psych Assist Scribes, which is a medical services company. Welcome, Cameron.
Thanks for having me, Kristen, and it's great to be a part of this today.
Yes, excited to have you. And we also have Sarah Castillo, who is the founding and managing partner of Taco Heads LLC. She is an accomplished restaurateur with 18 years of experience in hospitality and the food service industry. She's known for concept innovation, branding development, and site selection. Her concept Taco Heads was an early part of the food truck revolution in the Dallas-Fort Worth area in 2010, where later she kicked off Taco Heads Catering in 2012. In 2016, Taco Heads opened its first brick and mortar restaurant. And following that opening, Sarah went on to open Tinny's Mexican Cuisine in 2017 and Side Saddle Saloon in 2019. This year, Sarah and Taco Heads partners opened their second location in the Stockyards on North Main Street. Today, she's focused on customer relations, brand awareness, product excellence, and best-in-class service. And she is a Fort Worth native who continues to be active in her community. Welcome, Sarah.
Thanks, Kristen. Thanks for having me. Hi, guys.
And of course, we also have Jonathan Potter, who we already met and who introduced the mayor and got everything started this morning. So let's get going. First, I'd like everyone to just kind of briefly tell us about your organization. So Sarah, why don't you start us off with that?
Yeah, I am a local restaurateur here in Fort Worth, Texas. I started off in a food trailer, and I think I obviously grown in front of the Fort Worth eye and has been very blessed because of that. I think I feel like I'm like the little girl growing up in front of everyone, and so it's been really great having the Fort Worth community behind you. But with that being said, everyone in our food industry has been so supportive, and we're just creating a really cool niche here in Fort Worth, which is really special. So happy to be a part of it.
Great. And Jonathan, why don't you tell us a little bit about your organization?
Sure. Thanks, Kristen. As I said earlier, Connected Commerce Council is a national organization. We're actually international. We've got several thousand businesses in Europe also, but we focus on digitally empowered small businesses. Our founder was a guy who lived in a town that was so small in Maine it didn't have any stoplights. And you appreciate as we've gotten older, right? That those small businesses that struggled to meet the needs of their local market, so many of them have really evolved and grown and built significant audiences and customer bases online. The excitement of meeting restaurateurs, and I love the story I heard of a small Mexican restaurateur out of actually Orlando, Florida. I heard her like 4 years ago, and she talked about how she would spend $1 a day and put out a Facebook promotion. And geo-target it, right, to within about 4 blocks of her restaurants. And virtually every day, somebody would walk in with that coupon on their phone. And it was a new customer, right? And the idea that you could spend so little money and build some audience, right? Whether that's through Facebook or Instagram or Google Ads or some other platform, right? A local platform or a local business partner, was just eye-opening. And we brought that person around and introduced her to folks in Congress who, obviously some of them don't really understand the internet and don't understand digital platforms and technologies. They understand what's on their phone, but they don't understand how it gets there. And so for us, it's the integrated community of technologies. And frankly, having an organization like this, right, with doing this event with Cameron from the university perspective and Hayden from the corporate perspective or the community perspective, and Sarah from her micro perspective, right, which is not so micro, but it's like it to me, this is a fabulous platform and a fabulous event, and I thank you for inviting us.
Okay, and Hayden, why don't you tell us a little bit about your organization?
Absolutely. So Tech Fort Worth has been in operation since 1998 as an entrepreneur support organization, helping tech innovators launch and scale technology companies. And we help those at the idea stage, as well as those that are scaling globally. And we are lucky. We get to partner with several universities, including the Health Science Center. And full disclosure, I was looking at our calendar. We are definitely meeting at Taco Heads for our next check-in meeting. So great food, great culture. But we work with a whole spectrum of people and technologies. We started in helping diversify the economy here and kind of really advancing what was happening in biotech and medical technologies. But we've expanded since then, and that's still 56% of our client base are in the broader sense of health. But we've expanded into agricultural technologies, software, and really anything with a defensible position and moat that can't just be repeated and replicated overnight by any other competitors. And so we take no equity. We run multiple program levels, those at the idea stage. We actually have 8 companies graduating tonight for their final presentations on completing their pre-seed accelerator, and those that are scaling, getting resources and support through a myriad of partnerships. And so the ecosystem really does capture the essence of our organization and the multitude of resource partners that we work with, because it takes a village.
Great. And Cameron, why don't you tell us a little bit about your organization?
Yes, so the University of North Texas Health Science Center at Fort Worth is essentially the medical school in Fort Worth, but it's actually 6 separate schools under the same umbrella. A DO school, an MD school, a school of health professions, which is physical therapy and physician's assistants, a school of pharmacy, school of public health, and our graduate school of biomedical sciences. Now, all that is to say that we care a lot about economic development. Our traditional way of looking at that has been through educating the next generation of innovators, entrepreneurs, practitioners, providers, et cetera. But we've kind of moved into a new role just in the last 3 or 4 years to kind of help build that third leg of the economic development stool, which is the kind of start your own, grow your own business, right? Think of economic development as, attraction. How do you attract businesses to your area? How do you retain the ones that you've got and help people like Sarah open new locations and new concepts and sell more tacos? But then who's the next Sarah, right? Who's the next person that's going to get off the ground? And how do we make sure that they have a thick, well-connected network in which to operate so that they can do the things they need to do, like find a lawyer and an accountant that can help them do the things that they're probably not very good at, find funding to get off the ground, find customers, market, those sort of things. So we spend a lot of time thinking about what we call our entrepreneurial ecosystem and how to fill those gaps, enhance that, and really help Fort Worth, as the 13th largest city in the country by population, have an entrepreneurial ecosystem that represents that.
Excellent. Okay. So we all know that startups play a very significant role in local economies, especially in job creation in Fort Worth and in Tarrant County as a whole. I'd like for each of you to take a couple minutes to speak about how your organization plays a role on fueling that tech ecosystem. Cameron, you kind of mentioned this entrepreneurial ecosystem a second ago, so why don't you start us off on that?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the things that we do here on our campus is around biotech innovation. So we have labs, we have faculty, we have students, we have all the pieces to take research from our labs and try to commercialize it into the marketplace. I'm actually headed to a board meeting here in just a few minutes of one of our technologies in the Alzheimer's space that was developed right here by one of our local faculty members. And I think it has game-changing potential for a disease that's been very hard to diagnose, very hard to treat, and very debilitating for so many families. And so, you know, we're doing that kind of advanced science stuff, but it's also about giving our students that entrepreneurial mindset to begin to think about their role as a pharmacist or as a DO, as a practitioner that's seeing patients every day. What are the solutions that they could potentially bring to market that don't exist? How do we help them, ideate, work on those to protect their IP along the way, and then turn those into something that can help patients, that can cure a disease, that can help solve a major problem in healthcare. So it's kind of across the spectrum of, here are these bright young minds, and we want them to begin thinking about the things that they can do to help, create the future of healthcare. But then also the very relevant, very real new technologies that are coming out of our labs and our research that can hopefully make it to the bedside and help real patients in the next few years.
Okay, very interesting. The Alzheimer research is very interesting to me. Hayden, why don't you take some time to tell us how your organization is helping fuel the tech ecosystem?
Yes, so a lot of it comes through partnerships. So for example, like one of our partners, TMAC, Texas Manufacturing Assistance Center, helping work and get funding to companies to work on prototyping and testing and FDA regulatory pathways, but also just like supply chain and logistics and increasing the manufacturing activities that are here. And so that's one tangible thing that we're doing. But overall, we're a coach organization that's helping address each individual entrepreneur and the challenges that they face. There's always commonalities, funding being one of those. And so in 2012, we launched Countdown Angels to help organize and facilitate the interaction between angel investors and early stage high growth tech companies. Well, not exclusively tech companies, but any high growth companies that are looking to raise capital from angel investors and kind of get that seed capital to launch and grow. And so we're lucky we get to help facilitate that interaction with 50 plus angel investors here in the local community to get in, to have entrepreneurs access and accessible to pitch to them and present their ideas. With the university partnerships, I mean, HSC is a huge partner, and that lab space is a big asset to the biotech companies. But there's also other universities that are doing a whole lot. So like with the Texas Women's University, they launched a new grant program that are funding women-founded and women-led companies. And we actually just lined up some scholarships into our programs for 7 women-led companies into our incubator and our accelerator programs. So we're always looking to kind of, Cameron hit it on the head of like the integrated and kind of dense network of connections, but also reducing that friction. And whatever that friction point is for that entrepreneur, finding a way to reduce that, not just for them, but for everybody that comes next.
Okay, thank you, Hayden. Sarah, what role do you see your organization playing in this tech ecosystem?
Well, so I started off in a food truck, so that's how I got the word out. Like no one knew where I was. I didn't have a location or an address. So it was literally Facebook, Instagram, and then people started finding us, and 360 us and magazines starting to find out about us via people posting about it. So did an article. But it's really how we get the word out of what we're doing, who our people are, what we're trying to create, what our vibe is. And so like it's really a huge part of our business. And then during COVID, that was extremely, obviously very sensitive, and we had to adapt. So we were doing to-goes, and we were doing takeout orders. And so obviously everything like touchless payments and all of that. So like we were just really on our toes and to be like ahead. And it was great. Like, I mean, all the tech that was coming out during that time has been so helpful for us to be in business, obviously. DoorDash, all the delivery systems. And so, and especially it was great for Fort Worth because Fort Worth wants to help out local businesses. And so it just had to be accessible. And so that's what the tech company definitely did for the restaurant industry.
Okay, awesome. Jonathan, why don't you wrap this question up and tell us a little bit about your role in the tech ecosystem?
Sure. Thanks, Kristen. I think our role is much more aligned with companies like Sarah's than the smaller companies that are, if you will, trying to figure out which technology is going to work for them on which day for which activity, and then on the advocacy side, right? So we do educational workshops, on how do I do better digital marketing? How do I take a simple storefront business and turn it into really a much bigger business potentially? Or frankly, as the pandemic hits, right, and my doors aren't allowed to be open anymore, how do I stay alive? So we worked with companies really helping them accelerate their transition into digital companies that traditionally had not been digital companies or had used digital technology for their checkout only or for their little Instagram messaging only. The other thing that we do is really try to advocate, as the mayor was talking about, right? Helping folks understand that you can't write new laws and regulations for technology without it impacting sometimes disproportionately the smallest companies, right? People think that they're going to regulate Google or Facebook, and Google and Facebook are going to go out and hire more lawyers and figure out how to manage those regulations. But the small companies who have the lowest margins could really be hurt the most if they have to transition their technology systems because something doesn't work as well anymore as a result of regulation. So we are constantly bringing small businesses in to visit their members of Congress, to visit their state legislators and attorneys general, to talk about how technology is not just for the big tech companies. Technologies is for the small is for the small companies and the non-tech companies, if you will.
Yeah, okay. So switching gears, I want to give each of you some time to describe the importance of the online environment to networking and providing resources to local companies. I feel like this is especially relevant given the COVID-19 pandemic and the way everyone's kind of had to shift business to online. So Hayden, why don't you start us off with that one?
Yes, Sarah hit it right on the head. Like the rapid evolution to find the right resources, to use the right tools, to speed up that connectivity, whether it's with other founders, your customer, anybody else, is to really speed that up. And so that knowledge transfer for us, the client base that we're working with and the companies and entrepreneurs, it's very similar. They want to learn and they want to rapidly learn what is useful to them, what can amplify their ability to connect with others, whether it's through, I'm going to do customer development and discovery, and I need to connect with potential people to have a conversation with, and I can't do that physically. So what are the best platforms to do this activity to really validate that my idea is something that somebody wants and needs? And so the online community and the ability of those communities to speed up how fast knowledge is transferred, whether it be small solutions on the day-to-day or big platforms that are going to make a drastic improvement for them and how they implement that into their day-to-day practices and operations. I mean, that's a consistent for every entrepreneur, lifetime learners that are hungry to find new efficiencies and new effectiveness within digital tools and tools that others have kind of tested and broken and proved that they can achieve what they need to with it and implement those in, and have a network of people that are supporting, that have gone through that same challenge or going through the same implementation of those new tools and solutions.
Okay. Sarah, why don't you go next? Tell us just a little bit about, the importance of the online environment to networking and providing resources to local companies like your own.
Yeah. I mean, obviously COVID, but think about the QR code. Like, this has been a game changer. We couldn't touch menus, and my mom had no idea what a QR code was. I actually didn't really know what a QR code is now back then. But now, like, my mom, my dad, my aunts, my uncles, like, everyone knows how to work a QR code, which is crazy because they didn't even know their password to the Apple ID. But you just see that was like, hey, this is the way to the future. You got to get on board, or you don't have a menu, for the most part. So it was, yeah. So I mean, like, that was a big game changer for us, and we brought back menus, but everyone is still comfortable with the QR code, and they use it for other things, and not just menus. So it's just been like that cell phone has been a huge part of us being able to adapt and be safe, and make our customers feel that they're like, I don't know, it's in a great environment. Obviously, we're in the hospitality environment. Like, we are hospitable. We want people to feel comfortable. Like, we want them to feel at home. So it is I remember teaching probably an 80-year-old woman coming by, and like, how you get your phone out and showing them. But everyone's been really adaptive, and so that's been a huge part of our restaurants and whatnot. But yeah, just to touch on one thing.
Yeah, I was wasting so much time just like Googling the menu at restaurants before I realized that like there were QR codes for menus. I was just like sitting at the table Googling the menu.
And that's like, we're in the stockyards, and there's a ton of tourists there. And usually we just put our website, sidesaddlesaloon.com, but now we put a QR code on our little postcard. And so we mail those out to people in Michigan, to like, because you can fill it out and mail it all over the country. And so it's really cool to see that we're mailing these cards to with our QR code on it. So it's been a game changer for sure.
Yeah. And so, Jonathan, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about the importance of the online environment to networking and providing resources to local companies?
Sure, thank you. I know we do virtual roundtables with small businesses. In fact, we do virtual roundtables like this with the mayor and with folks in Fort Worth. And we learn, right? The greatest thing is when you bring the small businesses together and they learn from each other. Right. So it's funny when you asked about networking, I wasn't sure if we were going to go down the technology route of networking or the human route of networking. But the technology has actually created so many more opportunities for networking. And I think Sarah is example A, right? Not only learning from people who are bringing technology, but learning from walking around and learning from talking to other people in her local community. And then Cameron and Hayden, of course, are convening folks constantly locally, right? We convene people locally, but we also convene them nationally and internationally. And the languages might change, but the accents might change, right? But the learning doesn't. And so to the degree that folks can understand that they are not alone, right? You might run a very small business. You might run a home-based business, but Cameron will still find you an accountant, and Hayden will still help you figure out which technology platform or which investor is right for you as you grow. There is nothing better than having somebody to kick around ideas with that is not going to judge you, that is going to support you, and that gets excited about learning from you and learning with you. So networking is critical, I think, to all the small businesses.
Okay, Cameron, why don't you wrap this question up for us?
Yeah, I think there were really two sides to the pandemic. One was, the really unfortunate thing that a lot of businesses didn't make it. We had a panelist during Global Entrepreneurship Week lead a discussion around, was this the first ever small business led recession? Because a lot of these restaurants, mom and pops, dry cleaners, they went out of business and they will never come back, full stop. And that's sad, but that also creates on the other side a ton of opportunity for people to move into those spaces or those areas or those neighborhoods with a different concept, a different idea. I think the pandemic disrupted so many businesses that you either had to innovate or die, so to speak. And a lot of people took that and said, okay, well, now it's my time to take that idea that I've always had and actually go do it, right? A lot of people also lost their jobs. And so they were sort of forced into this world of, well, do I go find another job, or do I take that hobby that I've been working on in my garage? Do I take that piece of code and actually begin to develop that out and turn that into a solution about an idea that I've had for a long, long time? And so that kind of churn in our economy, I think, is really going to force a lot more innovation that we're already starting to see. We had another speaker during Global Entrepreneurship Week that is really leading the charge on taking virtual reality to the workplace. And he's already got Facebook and Microsoft as clients. And so it's not just that we're on a Zoom call right now, it's that I'm wearing a headset and I'm in a digital room with my colleagues, and yet they're all over the world. And so you're seeing, I think the pandemic, QR codes, QR codes have been around forever, but all of a sudden they got adopted in a huge way. I think my first ever Zoom call was actually with Hayden. I was like, what is this new technology? I don't know this. Does it actually work? All the other ones, video conference platforms, never worked very well. And now we all know what Zoom is and we're on it all the time. And so I think I'm really interested to see what that next level of disruption is going to be in our economy that's going to add new features, new functionality, new value for our economy. What are the things that people are going to invent that don't exist right now that are pandemic proof, or that are new things with people with ideas that probably never would have started something had they not lost their job, had their company go out of business. And I get excited about that. I mean, yes, we lost a lot of companies, and there's a lot of, heartache and debt and, ruined credit scores and things like that in the wake of the pandemic. And I don't want to belittle that, but I think it also creates an amazing opportunity for Fort Worth and really every city in the world.
Jonathan, I think you had a little bit more you wanted to add to Cameron's remarks.
Yeah, I think Cameron is right. The small business-led recession was an extraordinary challenge. I think that what technology did, though, was it made the businesses that survived are so much more resilient now. I won't say they're recession-proof or they're pandemic-proof, because that would be an overstatement, but it's extraordinary how people shifted their businesses. Those who were nimble and fast and aggressive and or who just figured it out, right? The adaptation with technology has been extraordinary. And the business loss, I think if you look at it, so many people who don't start this, the Small Business Administration in DC has extraordinary statistics for the number of businesses that shut down and never reopen. If you shut down because of a flood, or you shut down because of a pandemic, or shut down for a week or 10 days, right, and you never reopen, either because your supply chain breaks, your people go and find some work elsewhere, you don't have the ability to recapture what you've lost, right? And so you're just going to lose more money if you reopen. The ability to stay open and to stay connected to your customers and to stay connected to your employees, to keep your employees busy, is so important. And technology made everybody more resilient, and that's a value we can't forget. And that's a value that's going to continue forever. Companies like Sarah, you're not going to stop using QR codes. You might go back to paper menus and use QR codes. You're not going to stop using digital connections to your customers and expanding your base that way.
Okay, great. Cameron, I want to give you a few minutes to specifically address how local universities are investing in entrepreneurships and startups.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do this really across the board in a bunch of different ways, through direct investments, through starting companies like the Alzheimer's company that I mentioned. But then we also are a convener. We host a lot of events. We just came off of the #1 Global Entrepreneurship Week in the US. We had 135 different sessions really spread all across the city, all focused on shining a light on our local entrepreneurial community and our local entrepreneurial ecosystem. And we hosted what we called our base camp. And we had about 40 different sessions right here on our campus that were open to students, faculty, and anybody in the community. And so we've got this beautiful space. And if we can use that to connect entrepreneurs to the right resources that they need, or the right people, or to be educated on a specific topic about something that their business is facing, then that's a huge win for us. We do also host the Cowtown Angels, the group that Hayden runs. So we play convener of investment activity here as well. And then don't forget about lab space. So we actually have I think there's about 8, maybe 9 or 10 companies, kind of in various forms and various stages, that rent our wet lab space on our campus. They have access to our equipment, to some of our experts, to really take their biotech ideas to market. Do they work? Let's further test them. Let's make sure that they are safe. Maybe we're headed for FDA clinical trials or something like that. And these companies don't have the ability to go out and buy, $100,000 microscope, but we'll rent it to them for a very short amount of time because they only need it, say, 1 day a month. And then the wet lab space, they're not going to go build a wet lab, and they don't need to, because we have them on our campus that we can lease, that we can allow these startups to take advantage of. And then, of course, there's a student population here too, which, that provides a lot of opportunities for internships, for fellowships, for training opportunities. And then ultimately the pipeline of people to hire into those startup companies that have that lab bench experience, that postdoc experience, or they're an expert on a specific molecule or a medical device or a disease. And so we play a lot of different roles in the community, but I will say, I don't know that we're necessarily the best at telling our story, with one exception. I will give a shameless plug. We do run a podcast called Innovate Fort Worth, and we do highlight local innovators, because they're never going to end up in the Fort Worth Star Telegram. They're never going to end up on the front page of the Fort Worth Business Press or magazine, because they're early stage, are just getting started. And we want to be able to tell their stories, because there is so much cool stuff happening in Fort Worth that most people don't know about. And it just doesn't get covered because they're not making millions of dollars. They haven't quite cracked the nut. They don't have, thousands of customers, all around the world, but they're doing really cool, innovative stuff. And it's our hope that we can help give them a platform to share their stories, but also that other people will be inspired by the sort of role model, risk taker aspect to what people like Sarah and others have done in this city, to say, you know what, I really love tacos. I want to go start a really cool taco shop, and here's what I'm going to do it. We're going to make it happen. And so I think that's given a voice for some of the storytelling that we've talked about as well, that for these people who are super early stage, but are going to have a big impact, hopefully, on our community.
Okay, thank you so much. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk specifically about small business. So Sarah, why don't you start us off and tell us a little bit how the pandemic affected your business and what those outcomes might have looked like if you were not prepared to leverage the online economy?
Well, we did close. I had a Taco Heads in Dallas, and we closed that right at the pandemic, which was a blessing. And so we could focus more on Fort Worth. And we opened Theenies a week before the pandemic, so that was really tough. So we had a really strong week, and then we shut down, and then okay, what do we do now? But with all the tech company, we closed our doors. We didn't know exactly what we were going to do. And we were just like everybody, we're just waiting for someone to give us some sort of direction. And with our support team here in Fort Worth, we're reaching out to every restaurateur here and just what are we doing? What should we do? And so we are all doing takeout, so online ordering. Which platform do we use? How much should we negotiate for? Y'all heard about how Favor was just gouging restaurants and whatnot. So all of that was, very helpful, but also it's well, they're taking part of our margin. So it's we're just working for nothing. But they finally came along and obviously understood the importance of to go in the restaurant industry. So, but yeah, all of that was just a huge learning experience. And the tech company, that was how everyone made it. Fort Worth is different, but could you imagine LA and New York and whatnot? But we're here. People still kind of knew us, but there, I could imagine just like, I mean, you're fighting for everyone doing to-go orders, and you're only, I mean, people were comfortable in their homes to like cook and eat, but they only did to-go orders just to support the small businesses, and which was very, very helpful. And I mean, it didn't move the needle, like it made us stay afloat. But until I mean, it was, I mean, I still get sensitive talking about it, but like until government funding came along, like every restaurant was just going to go out of business. Like there was nothing. I mean, the to-go orders you can't make it on to-go orders. Like, so they're competing with everyone doing to-go orders. So it was extremely tough, but yeah, I hope I answered that without crying.
No, that's okay. It's your business, it's your baby. That makes sense. Hayden, why don't you take this question? Which is how the pandemic has impacted your business and what those outcomes would have looked like if you weren't prepared to leverage the online economy.
We as a nonprofit had to do the same thing that every other entrepreneur was faced with. How do I adapt fast? How do I change our model to still be able to deliver value to the customers that we serve? And we made a very quick decision on just, I mean, as everybody did, going completely virtual. All our service delivery, all of our facilitating and the convening of all the audiences that we work with moved to a virtual structure, and it's stayed that way. It has allowed us to reach more people in a wider geographic area, because if you don't know Fort Worth, there's a wide geographic area that it touches, and it's not always the entrepreneurs are all in the same spot. We're lucky whenever we can get them all into one room. And so that really helped us. And we found that we could reach more people and support more people this year, and last year and this year, than we have as an organization in any one year. And so it was a blessing for us to be able to make that change and move. I mean, just going back to the QR code, that speed of how fast technology reached every generation and all of these people, it happened the same thing for us as an organization. How fast can we move? How fast can we get these things going to help support? And prior to my time in Tech Fort Worth, I was at IdeaWorks, and we were working with those lifestyle tech companies, Main Street companies, wide variety, all the way from architects to brick and mortar and everything in between. And it's a challenge. It's my younger brother runs a food truck. And so there was a lot of strategy conversations just around how to survive and make that move and make that change, because the places that were really beneficial for them couldn't open up, were shut down. And so they were kind of in a good strategic position that they weren't tied to one location, so they could communicate with their customers and be mobile and get to any location that would be beneficial to them as far as their serving food and getting it into the bellies of hungry people that were looking for it. And so they were kind of in a lucky position as a small business to be able to be mobile and communicate that directly to consumers.
Okay, Jonathan, why don't you take this question next, just about how the pandemic impacted your business, what those outcomes would have looked like if you weren't prepared to leverage the online economy.
Well, I think for 3C, we did exactly what Hayden did, right? We moved all of our activities online. Otherwise I'd be on an airplane and we'd be sitting around a table, right, at Hayden's headquarters or at Cameron's office, conference table, right, things like that. And we'd have a group in an audience. So we've accommodated that. I think the advocacy business in terms of, lobbying Congress, lobbying state legislatures has changed dramatically. I'm not sure if members of Congress like it better because they hear from more constituents, because the constituents don't have to fly to DC or come visit them in their office. But we do many more virtual meetings just like this with members of Congress and the administration and state legislatures around the country. So technology has actually, I think, been a democratizing force in many ways, politically and legislatively, as well as I think it opens up for small business education opportunities, right? Where before Cameron and Hayden and I might have hosted more in-person meetings with smaller audiences, now we can host virtual meetings with larger audiences, and folks are comfortable. And so you only have to ask people for 45 minutes to attend a class instead of an hour and 45 minutes because they don't have to drive there and park. And so it's actually, I think it's going to be a very interesting hybrid set of engagements going forward. And it's actually pretty exciting in that regard.
Okay, great. I think we have time for one last question, and I'd like to give y'all an opportunity to talk about what Fort Worth can do to help small business thrive. So whether that's the city of Fort Worth or larger businesses, city government, universities, just what do you think can be done to help small businesses thrive? So Cameron, why don't you start us off with that one?
Yeah, so I would really say there's a lot of things that the city of Fort Worth can do. And when I say city, I don't necessarily just mean the government. I mean, this is entrepreneurship and small businesses. This is a team sport, right? This is not, let's point the finger at the government or the universities or other institutions. We've all got to kind of play on the same team here because this is vital for the future of our city, right? If we want more taco heads and more melt ice creams, then we need to go support those companies, right? And those people who haven't even started those companies yet. So I would really point to two things. One is the jobs report research that just came out a few weeks ago that the mayor mentioned. So that showed that firms 0 to 1 years old, so the newest of the new companies in Tarrant County, of which Fort Worth is the largest municipality, created about 30,000 jobs in 2019. And that's a lot of jobs. And it's way more jobs than I think most people would guess, particularly just with brand new companies. And we know that almost all net new job creation in the United States comes from firms less than 5 years old. So a lot of those companies, 0 to 1 years old, they're going to go out of business, but a lot of them are going to stay in business and create a whole lot more jobs in year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. What are we doing to support that activity that's really already going on in our city? Let me just put that in perspective with two examples. There was a big kerfuffle a few years ago when Amazon announced it was looking for a second headquarters, right? That was 50,000 jobs that they were promising. People were rolling out the red carpet. They were going to change the name of their city. They were given all kinds of hundreds of millions of dollars in tax incentives. Well, we've already got more than half of that happening every year in Tarrant County. So what if we kind of took that attitude towards beefing up our startup community? The other one I would say is we've heard a lot of rumblings about Rivian. This is this electric truck company, and Fort Worth is apparently on the short list, and I think it's 14,000 jobs. So half of what startups create every year in Tarrant County. The city approved like a $400 million package to try to recruit them and bring them here. All you got to do is just do the math on that and say, if we even did just a small percentage of that and oriented that towards our entrepreneurs and small businesses, that would have a huge effect, because that's where the jobs are being created. It's the new firms that create jobs, not the existing firms, not the big firms, not even the small businesses. It's the new firms that really create the jobs in Fort Worth and in the US. The other thing I would say is a few of us in the community got together and wrote a white paper last summer for the new mayor and the new city council, or that was kind of the reason we wrote it. But there's recommendations in there on education. There's recommendations in there on what the community can do to support startups and new companies. So if you want to look at that, go to startupfortworth.com, and there's an opportunity to comment, take a poll, give ideas, because we know we don't have all the good ideas, but we at least wanted to give the new leadership a chance to have a place to start the discussion, rather than just pulling together, oh, here's a blue ribbon panel, go study it for 6 months, and then come back up with a report we're going to put on the shelf. We wanted to kind of kickstart that conversation and throw a bunch of ideas out there that we've noticed from other cities about how Fort Worth can improve our local entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Okay, Sarah, why don't you take this question next? Just what Fort Worth can do to help small business thrive.
So I don't think I ever shared this with many people, but whenever I first got started, I went to the Fort Worth Small Business, I don't even know what it's called, but they helped me put my business plan together, pro forma, and it was free. And it was right there off of 35. Do y'all know what it's called? I can't remember what it's called, but I don't think many people know about that. Like, my mom told me about this really great service. And so I've been, every time like someone will reach out to me and talking about starting up a new company or whatnot, like I tell them about it. And this is an amazing resource. I think we should double down on that resource and really, really encourage entrepreneurs to get out. And just forums like this where people are not afraid to take a leap. And yes, I was 26 whenever I started my first business, and I didn't have all these I guess, you know, I didn't have kids or whatnot, but so I wasn't scared. And so I just like took a leap and didn't turn around and or look down. And, but that's not the case for everybody. So, but I think that double down on that obviously is a huge impact. And then also for just small business currently, the support, like visiting, but also digital, I mean, writing a review and just like being supportive of everyone on Yelp. And yes, we're going through a shortage of staffing in the restaurant industry, most industries right now. And so just also just being patient. So like we get it. Like, yes, you should have got your food 20 minutes ago. We understand that. So yeah, just kind of being patient right now in this like this environment, but writing a review, gift cards, whatnot. So all of that. But yeah, I don't know. It does irritate my friends and I whenever you drive by a big restaurant that is nationally chained and they're packed and you're just like, oh my gosh, like can y'all just go and like support some small business restaurants or whatnot. So but yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. And Hayden, what do you think Fort Worth can do to help small business thrive?
Oh, +1 on everything that Sarah just shared. The Small Business Development Center is so underutilized, and I used it when I launched the company back in 2007. It's a great resource, but awareness, and that's a challenge, and that's why like UNT Health Science Center, the city, and TCU, and really launching Sparkyard to hopefully build more awareness around these resources and really expanding them. So I like that Sarah brought up this idea of like active support, like intentional support for small businesses. That's a culture thing. Like love your place, love the companies. All types of entrepreneurs are launching new ventures. And there's value creation if you just stop and pause and look at it and give it a chance. And then being participatory and the spreading the word of that, sharing it with your network, sharing it with people that you don't know through reviews and those types of activities. We do an event annually, our Impact Showcase and Awards. It's to put a spotlight on technology companies that are in their garage, in the labs, not in the sight of others, to just have a curated night where people can go and meet 35 different tech startups all in one location to kind of speed up that knowledge transfer. Just like, hey, here's what's happening in our backyard. Here's the exciting things that are coming up. How early do you want to know about the QR code? Do you want to be the early adopter that's finding the innovator that's launching that new thing, but also getting to know the food truck that is primed to launch multiple new restaurants? I mean, it takes an appetite and interest in your local community to really be a participant. And just looking at how many people intentionally went out to support a small business on Small Business Saturday, and kind of being out there and putting dollars at play that you say, I want to see this type of stuff in my community and I want to see it be successful. Because you could have, as much as the PR around people that are finding that success, there are dozens others that are just waiting for you to walk through the door and know about what they're doing and what you're supporting. I mean, we have a client that is literally in clinical trials helping solve blinding, and they're like, well, how do I get PR? Like, how do I'm not getting PR? We're helping people see. So there's just a lot of ways to just put more intention. Anybody in the community can say, I can do a small step to help small businesses, and just building that more into the community here.
Okay, thank you. And Jonathan, how about you wrap this up for us? And I believe you also have the closing remarks for today's panel.
Well, thank you, Kristen, and thanks to everybody on behalf of 3C and our mission of supporting small businesses with technology nationwide. It's been a terrific panel here. Folks, we talk about technology and small businesses. And we've heard about health and sciences, and we've heard about technology companies and a real startup ecosystem, almost in a Silicon Valley sense. But then we've also heard about restaurants and brick and mortar stores, right? And shopping locally. And this is all a community, and it's all connected, right? It's connected by people, it's connected by technology. I'm going to offer one thing that the Fort Worth community can do, and that's frankly to communicate what you've said today to your federal officials also, right? And to your state officials. You are blessed with a mayor who is totally focused on this community and the group that's around this table today. I will say that there's federal legislation around Facebook and Google and the next great platforms, right? And Zoom is a platform. It's a two-sided platform, right? All of the technologies, not all, so many of the technologies that we love that are huge businesses are also important for small businesses. And messaging that connectivity, communicating the importance that small businesses care about larger businesses, that it's not an either or. We all have to win, is so important. And so communicating that to Attorney General Paxton, to Senator Cornyn, to Senator Cruz, as they literally take actions around Facebook and Google, around Amazon, around restaurant platforms, right? All of these are important. It doesn't mean that there has to be winners and losers. We can figure it out. But I think from 3C's perspective, this has been super helpful, very educational. Kristen, thank you for your fabulous job moderating. And thanks so much to everybody who participated.